Hi everyone, my name is Glenda with Sure-Fit Designs, whimsically known as Glenda the Good Stitch. Not very long ago, I got an email from a customer asking how to do a facing for a V-neck. And so I referenced a previous video that we had done where I gave general guidelines on drawing facings, whether they be a turn back facing, where the facing is cut all in one with the body of the garment, or a sewn-on facing. But this particular lady wanted to know how to do a V-neck for a pullover top. In that first video that I showed you, I did give an example of where you would have a V-neck and the button extension for the blouse and of course a sewn-on facing. But now let's take a look at what this particular customer wanted, which is more of this kind of a look where it's the garment is going to be pulled over your head, there's no center front seam, and a good example of this is this little V-neck tank top that I've got pinned up here on the wall. So let's first take a look at your basic bodice blueprint. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Sure-Fit Designs, we can fit your body in a size range from 28 up to 62 inches around with a master pattern that goes in those measurement ranges of 28 to 62. And for our international customers, that's that's 71 centimeters up to 157.5 centimeters. And so what you do is draw off what I call your body blueprint. So this is a representation of your body. And this is what you end up with, is a jewel neckline and a bust fitting dart and a waist fitting dart. So now we need to convert this, first of all, into a V-neck. So let me show you how to do that. We'll take another piece of tracing vellum and just lay it over top and then draw the bodice as per your measurements. But for a V-neck, you then decide how far down center front you want your V-neck to be. And that's one of the nice things about designing it for yourself, is that you don't have to have your V-neck on your garment too low, depending on how high or low your bust line is. So on this one, I came down 5 inches. And then what I did was take the designing stylus and drew just a very slight curve going from the neck point to that 5-inch marking to create the V-neck style. So, and center front, of course, is on the fold of the fabric. So now what we want to do is to not confuse everything. I'm going to remove the original pattern and be left with the V-neck pattern, which is where we're now going to put the facing on. Now, one other thing that I would like to mention to you is that this is called a strip down pattern. It means that it doesn't have any seam allowances on it. And most often when you're doing any new designs from your body blueprint, it's easiest to do it without seam allowances so that you don't have those extra lines confusing your eyes. So we've got our V-neck in place, and now I'm going to draw on the facing piece. And basically, a facing is anywhere from about, 1.5 to 2.5 inches wide. This one I have penciled it in, and I have made it 2 inches wide. And you will often find me in my videos penciling something in first of all, and then I'll come back afterward with an ink pen and show you exactly what those dominant lines are like. So this is all 2 inches and 2 inches below the center front point where I've dropped the neckline. Now what I'm going to do is take a piece of tracing vellum and I'm going to copy off those lines that I just made. And in order to hold this in place, I'm just going to put down a couple of pieces of, this is a Scotch brand removable tape, which you'll absolutely love because you can tape your vellum or even commercial patterns and take it off carefully and it's not going to rip the paper. So now I've got a piece of tracing vellum up in place and I am going to draw what your facing would look like. And so you saw me do this. I measure out the 2 inches like this, and 2 inches down from where I've dropped the neckline. And then I will take the designing stylus, and a facing is just basically a repetition of a previous curve that you've drawn or straight line that you've drawn, but it's wider than where you've drawn. So it's going to come in and it's actually going to face that raw edge. So I'm drawing the entire thing. It will look like this. And then for the center front, I'll come out this way. And now I want to just connect these lines together. And of course, when you're at home, I've mentioned this in many videos, please make sure you're using pencil to do all of this. For the sake of this demonstration, I am using this blue pen, and just so that you can see everything that I'm doing, and I've just marked my board with the blue pen, and that's why you don't want to be doing this at home with your pens. This is really something that needs to be done in pencil. I'm just going to move this tape because the next step is a real easy one to do, but I need to get the tape lifted off. So this now is center front of the facing piece. Now, what I'm going to do in order to draw the opposite side, because again, looking at this diagram, our facing is going to come down this way, across the bottom of the neckline, and then up this side. So when you're using this tracing vellum product, which is something that we've carried for years and years, I know you're going to love using it. It's so see-through, durable, and really is a lovely product to work with because you can see through it, but it is totally erasable. Now, in order to hold this nice and stable, I'm just going to put down another little piece of that removable tape, and then I'm going to make another line coming out this way. And so what I'm doing right now is I'm just tracing off the shape that I just drew, like this. And here's my neckline. And here's the V-neck opening. Now keep in mind, this is all a stripped down pattern. None of it has seam allowances yet. And one other thing that I want to show you is, let me just remove that tape. You can see how nicely that removable tape comes up and does not rip the pattern. So now I've got a square bottom on the facing, and it's coming up this side right here. One other thing you can do, and it might just make it a little bit easier. I'm going to move this a little bit more to make sure I'm in the camera view here. When I sew a facing and I've interfaced this, I very often will take this to my serger and serge the edges. And of course, going into corners on sergers isn't as easy as it is on a regular sewing machine. So with this handy tool called the Designer's Companion, which is one of our free getting started gifts when you sign up for the SureFit Designs newsletter, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to very gently round the corner of it like that. And I'll flop this little companion over and round this corner. Now that'll make it a lot easier when you're serging down to finish off the edges of the facing and to be able to come up the other side. Now there is one last thing to do, because now we've got a very, very easily prepared V-neck facing on both the pattern and the facing. You do need to come back and add your 5/8 inch seam allowances, which can be very easily done with this SureFit designing stylus. Again, for those of you who are new to SureFit Designs and watching this video perhaps for your first time, this designing stylus is the key to the system. It's got all of the seam allowances on it, and you just draw through the slots that are provided. Now, because I did a slightly curved line for my face, or for my V-neck here, I can't just flop this stylus over to add the seam allowances, not real perfectly because of the orientation of the curve. So when you're using the stylus and you can't just draw the seam allowance to the outside. Just remember this handy little process. Take the stylus, and it's the edge of the slot that's nearest the outside edge of the stylus, and watch what I'm going to do. I'm just going to slide that over until I can start seeing that blue line that I drew, and then I will add on the seam allowances on the exterior. And I just want to make sure I can keep seeing that. And this is going to come straight up like this from center front. And so that little bit doesn't belong there. And again, when you're using pencil, it's real easy to erase that. And so of course you'd add seam allowances to the rest of the body as well. And then I know that it would be easier if I remove this one now. And now we can see just the facing, and I'll turn it this way for you. And normally you don't add seam allowances to the exterior of the facing. This is what you would either clean finish or put on your serger so that you don't have any raw edges. But I do need seam allowances on the shoulder, like that. And we'll put a seam allowance over here and connect this one up. And then here's the process again. I'm going to find the curve. That's pretty close. I'm going to slip this out so that I can see that blue line just right on the edge of that seam allowance marking. And I'll add the seam allowance coming down like that on that side. And again, there's my curve. Come up here and just expose that stitching line on the inside, and there I've added the seam allowance on the interior of that V-neck, and of course it would come up like that. So now when you go to stitch this together, you'll be stitching down here, across here, and up here. And something I'd like to point out to you is in the SureFit Designs Learning Center, there is a complete article on stitching a V-neck with a sewn-on facing. And one of the things that you'll see is that you're going to come down to the point of your V, stitch across, and then back up the other side. So those 1 or 2 little stitches you take right here when the fabric is all turned to the inside are going to make that look like a point. And that's just a real handy little technique for you. Now let's take a look at a sample, another example, where I have done a very similar process. If this is a center front neck opening, and so this formation of a V is coming up to center front. If it were what I've done on this illustration now, the V-neck would come up to the shoulder line. But it's still a very similar concept to drawing the facing, which I have done. And excuse me, in this case, I did the facing piece out of a separate fabric and a different color, a contrasting color. Actually, this matches the leggings that I wear with this tunic top. And then instead of turning the facing to the inside of the garment, I reversed it and turned it to the outside, and then just stitched it and attached it to the main body of the garment. So there is an easy process for adding a stitched-on facing to a pullover V-neck. And if you've enjoyed this video, and I certainly hope that you have, please go on over to the SureFit Designs Learning Center, where you're going to find the article on the stitching the V-neck. And that's also, by the way, where you're going to find all kinds of videos in the video library on drawing, designing, and sewing with SureFit Designs. And while you're there, I invite you to join our SureFit Designs community, and you can do that in 3 easy steps. Number 1, you'll see a newsletter form, and that's at the bottom of most every page. And when you sign up for that, you're going to get a number of free gifts to get you started. And secondly, if you're in YouTube right now, make sure that you like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's SureFit Designs. And then the third thing is we now have a Facebook group going where all kinds of Sherfoot Design seamstresses from all over the world are interacting with one another and sharing their projects, ideas, and questions. And as I said, I certainly invite you to join our community.